Hello, I'm Jonathan Merrick, the Bishop of Lynn, and I'd like to introduce you to our Link province of Papua New Guinea and our Lent project for 2014, Bilum Bilong Pris. Money raised from this year's appeal will go towards providing Bible commentaries and study guides for new vicars as they go out to proclaim the gospel in our Link province of Papua New Guinea. You might wonder where on earth that is. Just 100 miles beyond the northern tip of Queensland in Australia lies the world's second largest island, New Guinea. The eastern half of New Guinea Island, plus the smaller islands of New Britain, New Ireland, Manus and Bougainville, make up the country of Papua New Guinea, an independent nation since 1975. It's home to around 7 million people, speaking between them over 800 distinct languages. Most of the main island is mountainous. It is in effect one long mountain chain rising out of the sea to a height of almost 15,000 feet. It is beautiful, both from the air and from the sea. It has several volcanoes, but eruptions are rare. It is, however, subject to earthquakes, tsunamis and landslides, and heavy flooding. Much of Papua New Guinea is covered in tropical rainforest. It's rich in mineral resources, such as gold, copper and oil, as well as natural resources, timber, oil palm and cocoa. Many of its birds and animals are closely linked to species found in Australia, such as marsupials. Plus, of course, the glorious, gorgeous bird of paradise that gives the country its national symbol. Some of its butterflies are so large that they're called bird-wing butterflies, because early European visitors thought they were birds. The first European visitors 500 years ago would have encountered a scene very much like this one, with the exception of Western t-shirts and shorts, of course. The beach is made up of white sand grains and black pumice, making it appear grey. The design of the windhouses has remained virtually unchanged for centuries. Here we see a typical windhouse, open-sided and raised up, so that the wind can blow through it and beneath it, and roofed with sago palm to keep off the sun, all designed to keep it as cool as possible. 80% of Papuans live in villages, and most of them will use the nearest river for washing everything: clothes, cooking pots, children, and indeed themselves. Here a group of village women prepare the evening meal while sitting under the shade of a sago palm canopy, thus making it a social as well as a practical activity. Public transport in Papua New Guinea, where roads and tracks exist, is via this Papuan equivalent of a bus. When the benches are full, other passengers must stand and hold on to the roof. Some Papuans leave their villages in search of the seductive riches imagined in the larger towns, but often end up living in settlements outside these towns, having to make homes from whatever materials come to hand. In these settlements, such as the settlement of 6 Mile outside the capital city of Port Moresby, church members, like the Mothers' Union members here, provide basic education to the local children. Also in 6 Mile is the Anglican Church of St Lucian, with its priest Father Reg, who is also chaplain to the Bishop of Port Moresby. Father Reg is wearing a red stole at this service, as they, along with the whole province, commemorate Papua New Guinea Martyrs' Day in early September. Here we see Father Reg with his entire collection of ministry resources, gathered over many years. Most priests have far less than this, especially at the start of their ministry. Their people are hungry for ministry and teaching. Their ordinands and new priests are keen to provide that, but they have so little to feed them for this teaching as they leave the theological college. In contrast, here we see Father Reg's counterpart, the Bishop's chaplain in our own Diocese of Norwich. The Reverend Simon Ward has a collection of ministry resources much better suited to the needs of an Anglican priest. Because travel in Papua New Guinea is difficult and expensive, ordinands have to take their entire family with them to theological college. Here we see Martin, a second-year student, with his wife, their 3 children, and also Martin's sister, who will help with growing food, cooking and childcare. Here we see another second-year student, Jethro, with his wife and children in their kitchen. Like everyone else's, it is open air, with some of the produce from their garden, a clearing in the rainforest. A typical meal for a student and his family is likely to include some green vegetables, but mostly will consist of starch foods like these cooking bananas. Unlike the ones that we buy, these are as hard as apples before they're cooked. The Anglican Church in Papua New Guinea has been established for almost 2 centuries. It started here on this spot, where we see the Anglican Cathedral at Dagora, built in the middle of the 20th century, near the southeast tip of the main island, and one of the earliest parts of the country to receive the gospel. I was there this last October, as the new Archbishop, Clyde Igara, was enthroned in this cathedral. Here he is, giving his first archiepiscopal blessing inside the cathedral. Further west, in St John's Cathedral in Port Moresby, there are several beautiful carvings by a local craftsman. This one shows the trial of Christ before Pilate in a Papuan setting, complete with eagle. Most Papuans have to build their own houses and grow their own food. Some are able to produce extra crops for sale in local markets, such as this one in Port Moresby, and so earn some much-needed hard currency. This young woman is less fortunate than the lady in our last picture. She has to sit by the roadside in the hot sun all day, hoping to sell a few betel nuts and cigarettes. Her small stock makes her just about not worth robbing. Betel nuts are the local, mild narcotic. Crime is an ever-present threat in the urban centres of Papua New Guinea. One of these local policemen is therefore carrying an M16 automatic rifle. The fear of crime, particularly robbery, is evident in this garden fence around a home in the capital. Note the razor wire along the top of the 7-foot fence and gate. Equally, another ever-present threat is that of HIV/AIDS. Fortunately, the Anglican charity Anglicare does much useful work through its Stop AIDS programme to raise public awareness, provide education and counselling, and distribute condoms and prevention information. Our Lent appeals in the past have supported this work, and its results show. Papua New Guinea was a key turning point during the Second World War when Allied troops, mainly Australian, prevented Japanese forces from reaching the capital, Port Moresby, and so establishing a base for invading the Australian mainland. The Bamana War Cemetery, near Port Moresby, holds almost 4,000 Commonwealth graves. Churches have been a force for good in Papua New Guinea across its long history of contact with the West. These Mother Union members, meeting in Port Moresby, are part of a national movement, giving women a voice and a collective influence across the country. Nationally, much work is going on in relation to gender empowerment, and the Anglican Church is playing a key part. One young delegate, however, is catching up on some much-needed rest. This child is sleeping in a bilum, the traditional Papuan bag, used as a cradle, as well as a hold-all for the vicar's books and other resources. A typical Papuan welcome involves village men and women singing and dancing in traditional dress. These men are welcoming Archbishop Rowan Williams and myself during our visit in 2012. Here, Archbishop Rowan, wearing a Papuan-style chasuble and mitre given to him by the local church, leaves Popondetta Cathedral, escorted by Papuan women in traditional costume. These boys in traditional headdress and beadwork also turned out to see Archbishop Rowan and his party. Equally as colourful are these boys and girls at an Independence Day celebration. Brothers and sisters from the Order of St Francis and members of the Melanesian Brotherhood also join in the celebrations for the visits. These Melanesian brothers, with their homemade panpipes, welcome visitors to their base a few miles from the capital, Port Moresby. Many of the ordinands completing their studies at Theological College would love to have a bilum like this one, full of resources like this Tok Pisin Bible, commentaries and study guides. With your help, we can give them these vital resources to start them off on a lifetime of spreading the gospel among our brothers and sisters in the beautiful nation of Papua New Guinea, where there is so much enthusiasm and joyous faith waiting to be tapped.